They're actually speaking to the Guinness Book of World Records, which they think it's the longest script written in gaming history. So I think somebody said something like 2.2 million words. Hi there, my name's Tom McKay. I play Henry of Skalitz in Kingdom Come Deliverance and the sequel Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Hi, I'm Luke Dale. I play Hans Capon in Kingdom Come Deliverance and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
You two have been pretty busy since the release. Just tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Had this crazy week where we were actually finishing some regular DLC work on the game, and then we went into some marketing stuff, and then we kind of bounced into this release party on Monday, which was a huge, very kind of spectacular and impressive event where everybody got to come together and celebrate. And as that party started, some of the reviews started to come out, which fortunately for us have been really, really positive. So that kind of lifted the evening. And then we did a day of autograph signings with fans, because there's an amazing fan base behind this game, many of whom are Czech because it's so rooted in Czech history. So we kind of had a day of celebrating the Czech fan base with the Czech fans and the kind of community of the game in person, which was really lovely. And then we came home and we were laughing how we kind of came back to our real lives, and it's, we've just been down this insane rabbit hole. But luckily the game is continuing to thrive, and yeah, it's been a really amazing week.
It's pretty surreal, yeah. Just on that reaction, I mean, as you mentioned, the reviews have been really positive, and I think overall people have been really impressed with the game. That must be a relief, satisfying for you guys, because you've spent, as you said, a pretty good chunk of time working on this one.
It's been years for us, and it's been even more years for the devs at Warhorse. And I think it's a real validation of all their work, because they've had this unshakable faith and belief in this product all throughout that time. We get to come and go, we work on other projects, but they're there all the time working on this thing. And in my opinion, their faith never kind of wavered in that whole time. But who knows, with any artistic product, whether it's a game or a TV or show or a film, you never know what the reception will be. And it's been incredible and really, really overwhelming. So it's a real validation of everybody's efforts on that front.
I mean, if you take into account the first game, it's 9 years of our lives now. And it was I think the first trip out to Prague for me was 1st of February 2016. And obviously, it's 2025. So it's such a big chunk of my life, about a third of my life. And to have it all culminating in this 1 week where, you had reviews, and we were shooting a lot of marketing assets, and we had the launch party and the signing with all the community. It was just this incredibly emotional experience.
But it is pretty overwhelming when all that kind of hard work comes to a head like that. Absolutely. And just on the point you mentioned flying out to, I think it was Prague, wasn't it, where you did a lot of the recording for this. Just in practical terms, over that period, how does that work? How often do you go out there? How long do you spend there each time? What's all that like?
Tom will tell you, but he's obviously the playable character, so he's got to be in every single scene. So Tom, I think you broke world records or something, didn't you?
They're actually speaking to the Guinness Book of World Records about various things, including the size of the script, which they think it's the longest script written in gaming history. So I think somebody said something like 2.2 million words. But yeah, Luke's right, because obviously I play the character that the player plays as, so anything that they could possibly say in this open world RPG has to be recorded. So in terms of our time there, we spent quite a lot of time together at the beginning for motion capture, and that's really lovely because you're all in a room together and there's other actors around, and they're long days, but they're really fun because they're more like traditional acting, so to speak. Then you go into the voiceover stage, and yeah, Luke's right. For me, that was a real marathon. I think somebody did a count up, and they said there was something like 38,000 lines that I've done just on the main body of the game before DLCs. And at that point, we were at something like 520 lines, so 520 hours, in the voiceover booth. So I would just basically go. It was like commuting to a regular job. I would go on a Sunday night. I'd work Monday to Friday. I'd do 8-hour sessions because we realised that most of the actors were doing 4-hour sessions, but the only way to get through that volume of material was for me to do 8 hours, and it kind of became this insane marathon of talking, which it was a real privilege to do that, but it was a huge challenge, but one that I really enjoyed for sure.
I did want to sort of touch on the script because we're waiting on that suspected world record. And yeah, obviously not all the dialogue was for your characters, but a big chunk of it was. And I don't know, is that just a daunting prospect? Did you know you were getting into that much dialogue?
I didn't. I don't know about you, but I think the thing is that the kind of evolution, the creative evolution of games, I've learned, is very different, certainly to plays and even to TV shows, that they grow as they're made. So even even Warhorse didn't know necessarily how big it was going to be and the kind of nature of all the narratives. So there's no way that they can tell you at the beginning how big it will be. Obviously, they had a brilliant arc of the story which they told us at the outset, which was incredibly exciting. So we knew the skeleton of the story, but in terms of the size and the kind of corners into which it would travel, we definitely didn't know that. But it was really lovely because in this game, Hans and I, Luke's character and mine, were kind of more disparate. We spent some time together, but they really come together in this game. So we do actually spend a lot more time together than we did previously, and that's been for me a really, really fun thing. I mean, we have a great friendship at this point. It's been a kind of real creative privilege to share that with Luke.
So the first game was already really big and ambitious, with a kind of a budget that was a little bit stretched, I must say. But then, of course, for the second game, Warhorse had a little bit more support from PlayOn and Embracer Group. So they were able to fulfill what they initially wanted to. The first game was almost like not a prototype, that diminishes it a bit, but it was certainly the second game was really the whole thing came to fruition of what they initially set out to create. And yeah, it was really lovely for the second game to have been given a little bit more to do. As Hans Capon, he's definitely a character that people seem to enjoy, and yeah, it's been a real privilege to play him.
From what I understand, I've not had too much time with the game myself, but it can branch in interesting ways, and the dialogue's quite reactive. So a scene might play out differently. For example, if you've happened to stumble upon an item that links into a quest you've not done yet, and that made me think, as an actor, you must have to re-record certain sequences, certain scenes, quite a lot of times, and does that get quite arduous? It must be very different to film and TV work, which I know you've both done before as well.
I think from an acting perspective, that's the biggest challenge for me, certainly in the second game as opposed to the first, that they massively leveled up that element of choice and the extent to which the decisions a player makes have a real impact on the character of Henry that they themselves are building. So it's a real kind of bespoke character for whatever decisions you choose to make as this character of Henry will completely impact what happens in the next hour and 10 hours and even 100 hours later. So it's really nuanced and it's kind of overwhelming. And what that means from a performance perspective is that, particularly in the voiceover, you would kind of go down one channel of a decision and then come halfway back up and go down another one, and then maybe all the way back up to the beginning and back down. And so it was kind of my brain was kind of very much in the hands of the devs and the director at the time, because there's no way that I, as the actor, could kind of hold all of that in my head. So I would basically just get the detail from them of any particular side quest, or even if it was a main quest, just to have a full understanding of exactly where his head is at any given moment. And that's not an acting challenge that you ever would have in TV or film. They're kind of linear. And that's been incredible. It's one of the most amazing and unusual acting challenges of my working life. And they were really, they put a real stress on detail and making sure that I was really, really precise with that stuff, and they were right to. And I found that incredibly fulfilling and challenging, and it certainly kept me going in those long voiceover days.
Luke, was it similar for you there? I know Tom had a bit more to do with the playable character, but did you come up against any of that stuff yourself as well?
I mean, not to anywhere near the same extent as Tom. I think he deserves a medal for the amount of hours he's put in, and also you got to give credit to the fact that, as he says, you have to play every single emotion and outcome humanly possible, right? So it takes great range. It's because he went to Lambda, It takes great range as an actor to be able to do something like that, because obviously he's acting as a vessel for the player. For me, obviously Hans is very much a character that has his own set of circumstances and wants and needs, and so it's been interesting to play him for 9 years over and over again, and it feels now like an old pair of boots. You know, I step into that character and I know what he's like, and yeah. But of course, there's a little bit of leeway there. There are different outcomes within the voiceover sessions where, you know, if a character, yeah, sorry, if a player chooses a certain outcome, Hans might react slightly differently, but most of the time it's Henry who is reacting, you know, differently the most.
We've got to a point where you can't really have one without the other, and the sort of friendship, because that friendship has become, for me at least, the sort of the real anchor. Like the two things for my character are essentially his family, what happened, you know, the loss of his family and all that stuff, which is the real engine of his story. But actually, the other kind of unmissable kind of piece of the puzzle of Henry is Hans, because they really come as a pair, and they, you know, that relationship and friendship goes a lot deeper in so many ways in the second game. Whereas in the first one, it was kind of light and fluffy and silly, and it's still all of those things, but it's much richer, and they're challenged in much more serious ways on lots of fronts, which means that we can both do a lot more, dig a lot deeper really with those two characters.
The game is written so impeccably well, and the characters are rich. So it's actually easy for us to work together in that way. And I think the buddy story that Hans and Henry have only works because of the writing and how rich that is. Because a lot of people tell me that initially when they first met my character, they absolutely hated me. And then later on, they fell in love with me. And I think that is just such a great testament to the writing, to kind of play, you know, change someone's first impression of you, and give it more depth as you move through the story. And I actually, at this point, don't know how people are reacting to Hans, because the game came out just about 3 days ago. So people might have gone the other way now and said, "Oh, I hate him again." But no, it's so well written and executed.
Another thing I wondered about working particularly in games, I guess this probably applies to acting in TV and film a little bit as well. I think it was you, Tom, that posted about this. Apologies if it was actually you, Luke. But with the games industry being so secretive, and I think you said you were under an NDA for about 3 years, and you just simply couldn't talk about this. And I just wondered, like, was that really frustrating for you? And does it have an effect? Because it's something you hear from game devs sometimes as well. If you are looking for other work in between, not being able to talk about something for so long, does it become a bit of an issue? Or it sounds like you actually had your hands pretty full with KCD2, so maybe not. But I just wondered how that sort of interacted with your kind of career more widely.
The NDA side of it is really unusual with this game, because there was a real hope and expectation from the fan base that it would be happening. So we would get asked a lot whether it was happening, and obviously we just had to lie or evade the question. So in that respect, it was quite challenging. And also I think the extent to which, for the devs particularly, but for all of us, there was this like very protracted period of like really intense work where you couldn't talk to about it, and people in the studio couldn't even talk to their partners in some cases about what they were doing. It was almost like working for GCHQ or something, that you can't discuss your work. So that was quite unusual. That you don't really have that in TV and film. Like, often you can't discuss what you're doing, but the kind of level of expectation publicly isn't, in my experience, the same. But in terms of other work, fortunately, for me, it didn't really impact. I was able to. One of the brilliant things about doing the voiceover in Prague was that they were incredibly flexible, because there was so much to get through. They basically just said, you know, you nominate your dates that you can do it, and as long as we hit the deadlines, that's fine. So I was actually, fortunately, really easily able to work other projects around it. And in terms of secrecy, it would just be the odd occasion where someone on a TV set or whatever might suddenly pop up and go, "Oh my God, I love that game. Are you doing another one?" But generally, those conversations were, in my experience, were more contained to being in Prague. People would be like, "Why are you here? Are you know, can I read into this? Well, I think I can read into this." And I'd be like, no, I just love Prague, and I come here very often for lots of holidays.
There's an element to which, if we'd have told people and broke NDA, they wouldn't have believed us anyway, because it'd been so long, 6 years, and people had given up hope. A lot of the fan base had thought, we don't know what they're working on, but it's clearly not Kingdom Come Deliverance. There was some members of the community that really held out hope, where it's definitely coming. But no, I mean, it's such a big gap between the first and the second that, people. That was actually what was so nice when the second game was announced, was because out of the woodwork came all of these diehard fans and this incredible reception, and everyone went absolutely crazy, and was really gratifying for me and Tom to be part of that and to be part of the community that's so excited about what's to come.
And actually, that core fan base, which is relatively small in global gaming terms, but they never gave up hope, and they are kind of the engine of this whole thing. They were always behind us and always talking about it and really pushing us forwards. And we've been fortunate that lots of people have joined those numbers and that fan base over the years, but there's this really passionate, energetic engine behind us, which is that core group of people, many of whom donated to a Kickstarter campaign to even make the first game happen. And that kind of energy, that sort of punky determination, absolutely has stayed with us. And there would be no second game were it not for those people.
I love engaging with the fans because they're so lovely. Like this game seems to attract a more a kind of studious, history-loving kind of person, and they're usually very funny, and they're great with the memes, they're great on the subreddit, so I really enjoy engaging with them, actually.
On the point about the historical accuracy buffs, probably seems a good point to talk about the director, Daniel, who I know is an outspoken character, and people have got varying views on him. I just wondered, what was he like to work with for you guys?
From our perspective, he's our director, so that's about as complicated as our relationship gets in terms of he knows what he wants. He has a really forensic understanding of the game that he's making and the characters that he's building and what he wants to achieve creatively. I think no one could deny that he's a kind of creative genius when it comes to making games. He is absolutely the kind of head and heart behind this whole machine and behind these characters. And he's a total pleasure to work with. He's a brilliant director. It's the nicest thing of all is that because he knows exactly what he wants and he's really brilliant at articulating that, it makes the working day incredibly easy and incredibly fun. He's a really fun man. He's got a great sense of humour. So yeah, actually the days working with him, we did hours and hours of voiceover on the first game. He did less of it in the second game just because of availability and the kind of the machine and how much was required. But we've spent hundreds of hours together in the motion capture studio. And I think working with someone who has that kind of passion and belief and clarity on what it is they're trying to make is actually quite unusual in creative industries. And so in that respect, it was a complete pleasure.
Yeah, he is a complete genius. And we've said this a lot, but often in motion capture, it's very different from film and telly, because with film and telly, you just have the one director, and that's the point of contact for taking your direction at any given moment, usually. But in motion capture, you have people who are responsible for very important aspects of this game and this scene that you're doing. So you have someone who's in charge of the animation of that scene, and someone who's in charge of the story itself and owning that. And then you've got Dan, who's the director of the business, and then you've got someone else and someone else and someone else, and they can come at you with many different notes. So you do the scene and you've got 3-4 different people coming over to you and you say, can you try it like this? Can you do that? Can you just be aware of this? And me and Tom are like, okay, can we distill this down? And Dan is really good at helping us to do that, because as Tom said, it's his brainchild and he knows exactly what he wants every time.
I think this is true of many high-profile games these days. There's always a lot of discourse around them online, and some of it can get pretty spicy, some might say toxic. And there was some discussion, the historical accuracy and stuff around Gamergate with the first game did attract quite a lot of discussion, and Daniel's certainly not shy about expressing his views on things. Did that ever sort of filter through to you guys, and did it give you any pause about returning for part 2, or were you pretty happy just to come in, crack on, and just reconnect with the story you'd been telling the first time around?
I think it's quite an interesting thing that's happened, really. With the first game, there was backlash from more left-wing mentality, and then there's been something of a backlash this time around from the right-wing mentality. And I just think it's quite poetic and interesting. But I guess that's what comes with making something that is what you might say is historically accurate. People are going to have really strong feelings about that. And all I will say about this is that Warhorse have an on-site historian. They're really passionate about doing that. And there's nothing in the game that isn't historically accurate or is to best of their knowledge from experts in the field. So I don't know. People are always going to have gripes with any. Also, it's quite indicative of the fact that the game is really successful, because enough people are seeing it and excited about it to reach fringes of the gaming industry that are going to have problems like that.
I think that's right. That it's one of the sort of blessings and a curse, I suppose, of being a successful product, whether that's a TV show or a play or a game in this case. That inevitably you will not be able to please everybody. But from our perspective, that doesn't really form a big part or any part of our working day. Our job is to turn up and make these characters the best they can be and kind of tell the story as clearly as we can. And in terms of our interactions at Warhorse, that doesn't form a massive part of or certainly not as big a part of the discourse as it appears online, because we've got a job to do, and our job is to make the best game that we can.
That actually leads me nicely into the kind of last thing I wanted to ask about this topic, that idea of online discourse versus real life fans, real life discourse. You've just spent a fair bit of time meeting fans. Did any of them bring up some of the stuff that's being talked about online?
No, I mean it's a really good barometer of the distortion between online interaction and real world interaction. No, we were there we did 9 hours, and it didn't come up once.
I think, to be honest with you, the people that are true big fans of gaming and this game aren't bothered about that sort of stuff. It seems to be people that are really politically involved, and they care very much about politics and not gaming, and they've just used this as a way to it's yeah, I don't know, but they'll use it as a weapon, but they're not necessarily into gaming.
Thanks both for engaging with that slightly awkward line of questioning, but being the BBC, we do have to travel down that path. On to some slightly less heavy stuff, just to round off. So, yeah, you guys, I just mentioned you've been working on this franchise now for 9 years together, and I would assume, I don't know, did you guys know each other before? If not, I would assume it had brought you quite close over the years?
I've never shared a pair of characters or a kind of working experience with anybody for this long, and I think what's really lovely about it, which is really unusual compared to the other kind of line of work which I do, which is generally TV, is that there's something really organic about spending that amount of time together. So you kind of get that friendship for free. Fortunately, we get on really well. I mean, that wouldn't be the case if we hadn't, but we spent hours and hours of kind of messing around and making our own fun in the motion capture studio on long days. And I wasn't consciously aware of that at the time. You're just having fun with someone that you like. But actually, that's definitely been a really positive byproduct, aside from the fact of having a really good friend, creatively, it's just built almost for free, this friendship that has evolved between Henry and Hans, obviously, in the game, and Tom and Luke in the real world. And you don't really get that. In like TV, often you can turn up on a morning and you meet the person that's playing your partner or your mum or your child, and you're expected to almost immediately create this kind of lifelong bond. And that's fine, that's the job. In theatre, you have a bit longer. But in this world, we had loads of time. And it certainly means that by the time you get to voiceover, you've got all that, even when often you're not actually doing it in real, you're not doing it in real time with the other person, you're doing it on your own, often without the other person's lines. So it really helps to kind of be the building blocks of that friendship. And yeah, it's been a total pleasure. And yeah, for me, I don't know how you feel. You might feel totally differently.
You made me cry, Tom. You're gonna make me cry. No, yeah, it's completely. It's been a wonderful experience. I couldn't have asked for a better kind of co-star for the game. Like it's been wonderful, and I think yeah, totally slipping into the characters just makes it so much easier because we know them so well, but we now know each other so well. And it's just an absolute joy to work with him.
So obviously KCD2 has already sold 1 million copies. Fans seem to love it. Can we expect to see you back for part 3?
Couldn't possibly say, could we?
We have no idea.
Lots of questions about that.